Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Build a Performance-Based Influencer Marketing Strategy. Traditional marketing methods are becoming less effective, but influencer marketing is gaining power as a way to attract and convert customers online. Pardon me, everyone. I dropped my notes. Anyway, let's take another stab at this. So good morning, everyone. We're talking about how to build a performance-based influencer marketing strategy. And we're going to be here with Matt Bailey, who's the best-selling author and digital marketing expert, as he discusses the steps involved in implementing an effective influencer marketing strategy for your organization. Now, by default, I just want to indicate that we have some slides to show you here. And what's going to happen is that everyone is muted, and if you want to ask a question, then all you have to do is click on the chat icon in the upper right-hand corner of the WebEx Meeting Center, and a chat window will appear in the lower right. From the drop-down, select a participant to address your message to, select Host and Presenter, and in the chat box, type your question or comment, and then click the send button. Now you can also raise your hand with the raise your hand icon, and a host will contact you via live chat. So just a reminder that in addition to the chat function in WebEx, you can also join us for a live chat on Twitter by following us and tagging @Simplilearn in your questions. Now you can also join us on YouTube Live. Just type Simplilearn into the search bar on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe to receive alerts for all upcoming YouTube live videos. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Matt Bailey, who is the best-selling author, marketing expert, and corporate trainer, and a professional speaker. He is also the founder and president of SiteLogic. SiteLogic Marketing. Now, Matt is a digital marketing instructor for the Direct Marketing Association in New York City and a member of the digital marketing faculty here at Simplilearn. He is the author of a number of books, including Internet Marketing, An Hour a Day, Wired to be Wowed, and a new book, Teach New Dogs Old Tricks. So, Matt, thank you again for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
All right, Dan. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. We've got lots of microphones going on here with new buttons. So that's how we are on this first Tuesday after daylight saving time begins.
Absolutely. Too many buttons. I think we just need one. All right.
Right. Great. Well, thanks for joining us. So we're going to go ahead and hand over control of this party to you.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on this webinar. And just as a mile-high overview, the things we're going to cover, really understanding how influencers influence us, and also if you are considering looking at influencer marketing, things that you can do to screen potential influencers, look at how well they may work with your company or your brand, and also setting expectations as far as what type of payment or compensation might be expected for what kind of content.
Extreme apology, Matt. Your screen is not shared.
Ah, all right. My window disappeared here. Let me see. All right, that should be working now.
Great, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Abid, for pointing it out to us. So
I need just one button. One button. That's all I need.
If I were king, we'd have one button. all right, thanks, Matt. Let's take us through the top again. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, there's only been one slide here, so I think we're good. We're going to look at how influencers influence us, how to screen potential influencers, and then also what do you get for what you pay for. And I think probably the most important aspect of working with influencers is how to manage the relationship and balance brand control. Those are some of the biggest issues when we get into influencer marketing that brands may be unprepared for, as well as trying to figure out before they even get into a relationship with an influencer what to expect and how this will all unfold. Now, just a high-level view of some of the trends is that, YouTube is the new celebrity maker. Some of us at a certain age may have grown up with network television and maybe a few limited channels, and the stars were the ones that were on those channels. There were regular TV shows and actors and actresses, and so the pool of celebrity was very small. Now with digital media, YouTube, Instagram, all types of social media, one study showed that children under 13 recognize more YouTube personalities than they recognize television personalities. And so YouTube and Instagram have become the influencers of the new generation. Influencer marketing, of course, because of its accessibility as well as the growth of celebrity or influencers is increasing. And so brands are jumping all over this to get in early. Now, the other side of this is that there is high risk, high reward at this point because it is so new. There are a lot of brands getting into it that are unprepared for what they may fall into, but also in working with influencers themselves. Some don't have any business experience whatsoever. And so you are putting your brand into the hands of someone who may be very young and very inexperienced. And there has been some backfires when it comes to working with different influencers. So at this point, being very early, it's a shiny object, it's a trend, and there's high risk, high reward. And as long as you are prepared for that moving in, you'll be all right. Now, one thing that we do need to understand, and this is something that I have to educate people as well as potential clients about this all the time, is that there is no such thing as going viral anymore. The concept of someone creating a piece of content and it just goes viral because it's so good is really outdated and out the door. For years now, the concept of going viral has been co-opted. And in order for something to go viral today, you can bet that there are a number of advertisers, there are agencies, there are paid influencers, there are mass accounts on social sites. There is a lot of money and a lot of people involved for something to go viral anymore. And accidentally, the chances of it happening are slim to absolutely none. Most viral ads, viral content, viral videos, or anything that's called viral is the result of influencers, agencies, and a carefully planned network of making something go viral. And so, especially if you're working with someone and their goal is to try and create something that will go viral, unless you've got a large budget and a lot of people, the chances of that happening are very small. Now, when we start talking about influencers, there are a number of levels of influences that we can look at. The first level of influencers are the ones that are the typical influencers, and those are the actors, singers, sports personalities, or fashion personalities. Also, reality TV has given us a number of personalities. So that goes into the area of celebrity. The number one followed celebrity is Selena Gomez. She is followed by more than any other celebrity, singer, or personality right now in the world. Now, what has created this influencer marketing are then what are called the macro influencers. These are people that have more than 1 million followers. So in the fashion industry, Arielle Charnas is probably the number one influencer. She has over 1 million Instagram followers and over 26,000 followers of her Facebook account. She has a blog that she's had for well over 10 years called Something Navy, and the numbers of her subscribers to the blog are not readily available, but they, I am sure, number in the millions. Now also, like I said, YouTube is the new star maker. Good Mythical Morning is a morning talk show that takes place on YouTube. There are over 13 million regular subscribers. That does not count the people that just go watch it or stream it. And then also Dan TDM, he does daily gaming videos where he walks through games or plays games or has friends online, and he has over 18 million subscribers. So as you can see here, the number of media has increased dramatically. The number of ways for personalities to be developed, as well as to develop followers and influence those followers, has increased substantially. Now also, beyond the macro influencers, there are the micro influencers. This is really where influencer marketing has really started to develop a sweet spot. Micro-influencers typically have audiences between 10,000 and 100,000. And what I like about micro-influencers is that they are typically focused on a specific industry or a specific area of interest. You'll find micro-influencers who are travel bloggers, food bloggers, they use Instagram, Pinterest, they're also in fashion or home decorating. They typically have a passion about a specific area, and they publish in that area. And they vary between mediums. Some are more focused on blogs, some are on Instagram, some are on YouTube. But what makes this a sweet spot for advertisers is that they're focused in a specific area. And so the relationship aspect with a brand is right there for a brand that is in that industry or in that area or wants to reach their subscribers who have that specific interest. Now, also, this gets into travel. You can see this a lot in photography. And then also within travel, photography, food, fashion, you see these niches arise, that there is adventure photography or adventure filmography. There's these niche areas that are evolving even within the micro-influencers. And so there are specialty food, specialty travel. Specialty food revolves typically maybe around wine or around gluten-free diets. And so even though you can group this into larger groups such as travel or food, there are always these micro niche industries that tend to be arising. So that's just a quick overview over who is an influencer and what can you typically expect from an influencer and the different levels of influencers. Now, here's the bottom line. Influencers will extend your reach if you work with them, but it is for a price. Now, Old Navy works with both macro influencers and micro influencers. One example is a campaign they have with a fashion blogger or more of what we would call a homemaker blogger. And Megan reaches over 1 million followers. The campaign with Old Navy reached over 1 million followers. She has over 2.3 million subscribers to her YouTube channel. Now, in combining with Old Navy and working with some of their clothing and fashion, Old Navy was able to gain some of Megan's subscribers to their social channels. She just styles Old Navy products, clothing, shows people how they can be used, and implements them in her blogging and in her videos. Now, really, does influencer marketing work? What does it do for us? Now, it's interesting because there have been a couple of tests and studies done, but really when you look throughout modern history, advertising has always featured celebrity. I went back and even found some old Frank Sinatra ads, and it was interesting because most of them were cigarettes. And why have celebrities always been used to sell product? Well, it turns out that our brains are actually wired to be attracted to celebrities. There was a Dutch study done with women where when women looked at photos of celebrities, it activated a part of the brain, the medial orbitofrontal cortex. Now, that medial orbitofrontal cortex is associated with feelings of affection. That when we recognize and have feelings of affection, that part of our brain fires up. And so that Dutch study found that when women were looking particularly at celebrities, that part of the brain was activated. In a UK study, people were asked to look at what they considered average-looking celebrities as opposed to beautiful non-celebrities. When people looked at the ads that had celebrities, there was a more intense emotional response in a similar part of the brain. And so it's very interesting that our brains just seem to be wired for celebrity. We feel as though we have some connection with them. There is affection there, and we tend to know them. Now, I found it interesting that even my own personal experience is that I was in Las Vegas for a show, and while I was there, the guys from Top Gear. Top Gear is a British show on cars, and actually the hosts have moved on and created a new show called The Grand Tour. But I was in the same room with the guys from Top Gear, and my first inclination when I saw them and made eye contact was to wave, as if somehow they would know me. Yet it was all one-sided. I knew them. I knew their personalities from being exposed to them on television and listening to them and watching them. But they didn't know me. But yet somehow there was that sense of familiarity. And advertising understands this. In fact, over the past decade, the number of celebrities has more than quadrupled. Think about it. With new channels such as HGTV, Food TV, reality shows, YouTube personalities, contest shows, the number of who qualifies as a celebrity is just being increased daily. And the media has a vested interest in creating these celebrities because ads with celebrities have more than doubled in the past few years, and now it's estimated that 1 in 4 ads feature a celebrity. The industry knows that celebrities sell, and so the industry creates more celebrities to sell more. We're wired to be connected to celebrities. Now, also, whenever you tie your brand with an influencer, it will increase followers. A couple of examples, campaign examples, are one of the Super Bowls. There was Audi was partnering with Snapchat personalities. During the day of the game, these Snapchat personalities were just putting out, I love this picture here, that dog doesn't care who wins. It was photographs with funny headlines that really had nothing to do with the game. In fact, it really disparaged the game, that they didn't care what was going to happen. Now, Audi, there were netted 2,500 new Twitter followers and 9,000 new Facebook fans. There was about 37 million impressions, about 2,400 campaign mentions, and about 100,000 views on Snapchat and new Snapchat followers. So Audi was able to partner with this influencer, and because of that, they gained new followers, they gained new views, and new fans. On the other side of the screen here, we can see here is Logan Paul partnered with Sour Patch. And Sour Patch is a candy, and they went around New York and did a prank campaign. And by partnering with Logan Paul, Sour Patch gained 120,000 new Snapchat followers, and there was about almost 7 million impressions generated, over 500,000 on one day, more than 26,000 screenshots, and about 1,900 Twitter mentions from that campaign. So we know that when a brand partners with an influencer, that brand gains more followers and gains more visibility. Now, what can you expect, though? For these numbers, what's the typical price? What do you get out of that? Well, typical pricing is if you go to a high-end blogger, a macro blogger, you can expect a single tweet to run between $50 or $100. Now, when you go to a high-visibility blogger or vlogger is a video blogger. So these are people that have a YouTube channel, and that's their primary means of communicating. If you go to them for a single video, it could run as high as $100,000. That's what the Logan Paul Sour Patch campaign ran, was about $1,000 or $100,000 per video. A single review from a popular blogger can run a brand about as much as $10,000. An example of this is Honda paid about $10,000 for a 2-minute video with an influencer. Now, what you can expect typically is about $100,000 for an influencer who has over 5 million followers to create one video post for each platform. And that's typically YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, maybe Instagram, depending upon what you agree. And so, as you can see, the cost can go up dramatically depending upon who you're working with. Now, this is why also micro-influencers are coming into popularity, is because they don't cost as much. And also, they influence a smaller group of people, but a smaller group of people that have something in common. You see, if you partner with a high visibility or a macro influencer, they're following this person because they're entertaining. But really, there is not a specific affinity group based on a passion or a like or a hobby or something like that. It's more based on the entertainment value. Whereas your micro-influencers, they have that affinity group, whether it's photography or travel or food or fashion or decor, something like that. And so it's easier for a brand to partner with a micro-influencer and have some specific relevance. Now, not all campaigns are expensive. For example, Sephora, which is a beauty brand, built an insider community that they call Beauty Talk. And while they do provide free product to reviewers and bloggers and fashion celebrities, those celebrities and influencers, they come back to this community called Beauty Talk, and they leave very honest and open product reviews. What Sephora has encouraged is let us know what you like, what you don't like, give your opinion, because some are going to like the product and some are not. And what they've realized is, especially when it comes to beauty products, not everything works great for everyone. And so by hearing different opinions and hearing what's good and what's bad, you can make your own determination based on your skin, your coloring, your needs, or your preferences. And so getting the good and bad from multiple sources, Sephora has found that that is a great method of being honest and authentic. Also, another fashion or beauty site called Glossier, they really focus on what they call regular women, micro-influencers. And 90% of the revenue comes from these highly engaged regular women rather than utilizing macro-influencers or micro-influencers. They're just using their everyday customers and featuring them and highlighting them in order to create a community of followers. Many other brands have chosen to highlight employees or even customer stories. And in doing so, it presents a very human, relatable story to the outside world. And we're fascinated with behind the scenes of companies and how they work and what people do. And also, many customer stories or employee stories, they're great stories. And stories engage us. So it doesn't have to be, an influencer marketing campaign does not have to be a $100,000 or $500,000 campaign for a brand. Many times it's just looking for the stories that may be in your own company, that your customers may have, or even allowing your customers to engage with you in different ways. Now, the second part of working with influencers is being aware as a brand, when you approach an influencer, being aware of the numbers and their followers. Now, this is the latest shiny thing, as I said, and many times there are, how should I say this, bloggers, influencers that aren't really, they're really too honest when it comes to talking about their follower numbers. In fact, it's not too hard to go online and find ways to buy followers. or to buy likes. Sometimes there are hidden relationships and questions about just how influential are they. They might have a lot of followers, but where is the influence? Can that influence be measured? Can it be valued at any method? So you may want to ask about past campaigns that this influencer has run, who else they've worked with, and maybe talk to them in order to know what previous campaigns or previous brand experiences have had. And so you can get more of an idea of the actual depth of influence that this influencer has. We can also, because of these methods of overinflating follower numbers or likes or engagement numbers, it becomes a question of credibility. So, for example, there is a site here called Buzzoid, where I can go and I can buy followers. I can buy 2,500 followers for $30. I can buy 5,000 likes for $40. As you can see, it's not a lot of money. Anyone can go boost their follower or like numbers and make it look like they have more followers and more engagement than they really do. And in fact, it doesn't take much. Just go look at the news and look at click farms. There are click farms that are out there that all they do is follow personalities and like their status, like what they're doing, and they follow them, and it can be very misleading. So be aware of the influencers that you are looking at, and there are some services out there that will help you do an audit of those follower numbers. Just be aware that really this is an arms race. As soon as software can detect which followers are bots or software generated and not humans, guess what? The click farms get better. And so just as someone says we can detect who's real and who's not, someone's going to find a better way to overcome that detection, because this is big business. The more followers I have, the more money I can charge. And so not all are going to be honest and upfront about how many followers they have or the engagement or depth of influence that they have. And so at this point, it's still good to look into the services that will offer some sort of audit of the actual number of followers. Something else that is vital is to look at the history of that influencer and look at their history of disclosure when working with brands. Over 90% of celebrities who do social media endorsements violate FTC regulations. And this is prosecutable. The FTC has become, the Federal Trade Commission here in the U.S., has become a lot more active in pursuing social media personalities who do not disclose brand relationships. They're also going after the brands. In Europe, the EU is becoming much more active in going after brands and personalities that do not disclose advertising relationships. In this example here, Margot Robbie was at Glastonbury, and she was tagging herself and tagging these hunter boots that she had on. Now, originally, she hashtagged it with ad. However, it was deleted shortly afterwards. And so her followers were confused. Was the original hashtag a mistake, or was this really a paid post? Not really sure what was going on. So sometimes it can be labeled as an ad and sometimes it's not. But what they have found in surveys is that the vast majority of celebrity social media endorsements do not contain the hashtag ad, which is the simplest and easiest way to disclose the relationship. Now, in a survey that was done this year, social influencers were asked, do you label advertising content as sponsored, as advertising content? Only 52% of influencers said, yes, we label content as sponsored all the time. 41% said they will only label content as an ad when they are specifically asked by the brand to label it that way. The problem has become that there are brands that know that if it's labeled as an ad, it doesn't get as much engagement. And so sometimes the brand will put pressure on the influencer to use the product but not disclose it as an ad. That can get you into trouble with the FTC, with the EU, with many other organizing bodies that do consumer protection. This is an ad. In fact, there is 7% of influencers who say that they will never label content as sponsored. This is the responsibility of both the brand and the influencer to mark appropriate content as sponsored or as advertising. We'll get a little more into this, but this is a very, very critical issue and one that both brands and influencers need to be serious about because it's not going away, and the government, both in the U.S. and in Europe and in other countries, are looking at these relationships much more closely. And so be aware that this can be a pitfall if you try to bypass this in order to get more engagement. Now, the third thing about influencer marketing that's vitally important is not to forget about measurement. Most people will develop these brands in order to get more followers, but they don't, at the beginning of the campaign, sit down and decide, well, what do we want from it? Now, you can use some transactional tracking. If you're doing a promotion, you can have discount codes that influencer can give to their followers. You can develop individual landing pages or tag links. That's one way. Now, one study by Thomson said that businesses are getting $6.50 in revenue for every dollar spent on influencer marketing. However, eConsultancy did another report and said that ROI is one of the biggest challenges for brands. So it's very interesting that when you're researching and looking at different headlines, you're going to find very different views on influencer marketing. In fact, here we see one is saying the ROI is fantastic. The other one is saying the vast majority of people can't calculate an ROI. In fact, one brand, the Orchid Island Juice Company, Natalie Sexton there is director of marketing, and she says you have no way of knowing what kind of impact Snapchat is making for your brand. So you need to decide what you want from the campaign and how you're going to develop the campaign around that. So begin with the end result in mind. What do you want? And I will tell you from a brand perspective, avoid terms like engagement and awareness. Those terms are so fuzzy, for lack of a better term. They're so devoid of actual meaning because engagement can mean so many different things. Awareness can mean so many different things that they aren't measurable. They don't track to actual actions. They're really just views. And when you think about how many actual impressions or views the average person sees in a day, they're not worth much. So start with clear goals. And I like the acronym for SMART goals. Create goals that are specific, meaning I want to increase sales by 3,000 in 1 month. Or I want to increase my followers on Twitter by 10%. Or I want at least 1,000 new customers or 1,000 new followers. Those are specific. And they're also, because they're specific, they're measurable. You'll know whether you reach that or not. Make sure they're attainable. Are they realistic? And then also time-based. When do you want this to happen? This month, this quarter, this week? That is the way that you set an attainable, measurable, SMART goal. Now you can track with tracking pixels, with landing pages. You can do cross promotions, coupon codes. Instagram has a comment to buy where you can click in the comments and go buy the product. And that provides a level of a measurement across the platform. And then also within YouTube videos, there are links that can appear during the video and you can measure the click-throughs. And so the social channels themselves are enabling better ways to track engagement all the way through to the sale or to the conversion. And so these actually are going to get better through the channels because it's in the channel's best interest to be able to provide tracking tools and mechanisms for these relationships. Now, managing influencers. Here's the issue. Most of these influencers have gotten to where they are based on the sheer weight of personality. Most of these influencers are very young. most of your YouTube personalities that have followers and subscribers in the millions are in their 20s. Some are in their young 30s. And now they're being thrown hundreds of thousands of dollars by brands to do things, to say things, to promote a product. And this is a problem. This is a quote from an unnamed agency executive that said influencers are still not aware of some things that are very obvious in marketing, like sticking to a schedule. To them, it's not important. So they'll just say, oh, do you know what? I'd prefer to post this Instagram tomorrow because I'm just not feeling it today. For marketers, that's a nightmare. See, the issue is a lot of these influencers, they don't have a 9-to-5 job. No one's telling them what to do. And people are throwing money at them to mention their brand, talk about their brand, and no one tells them what not to do. They are surrounded by people that are enjoying this just as much as they are. And so they do what they want when they want. Because what are you going to do as a brand? Are you going to cancel the contract? Are you going to end the relationship? And so many times you are working with very young and sometimes very immature influencers. And they may not see your schedule as being very important, especially if they're a part of a larger campaign. To them, it's not going to be as important as it is to you. Now, probably no story right now is bigger than what has happened to Logan Paul. Logan Paul has probably about 12 to 13 million subscribers on YouTube. He's probably one of the most recognizable YouTube personalities. And the problem is that a few months ago, Logan Paul was in Japan, and he took his camera crew, and they went to what was called the suicide forest. It was called that because that's where a lot of people go to commit suicide. And it just so happened that while they were there, they found a body hanging from a tree. This goes to the immaturity of a lot of these influencers. Rather than shutting down the cameras and reporting it to authorities, they filmed it. They filmed it and they posted it. Logan Paul posted that video to his YouTube channel. He then had to take it down, issue an apology, because the backlash was huge. And as you can see here, Vanity Fair talking about this is what's going on with these YouTube personalities. They're realizing that the bigger the thing they do, the more shocking it is, the more subscribers they're going to have, the more views they'll have, and the more views they have, the more money they make. And so Logan Paul has learned this, there's no such thing as bad press type of mentality. And after a while, YouTube reinstated him. And within weeks of reinstated him, Logan Paul, if you are reading the headline, he used a taser on a dead rat. He also said that he would eat Tide Pods, as many as the likes or retweets that he got. Really very insensitive after just posting something about someone committing suicide. So YouTube has cut off his ad revenue. It's been estimated that his ad revenue is in the millions of dollars per year. You see, it's not taking long for these young personalities to learn. The more shocking, the more views, the more money they make. And so what type of culture does this create? It creates this kind of culture. And brands, I believe, are just as guilty at promoting it as the stars themselves, as the influencers themselves. Now, a little less shocking and a little less serious are an understanding that when you rely on influencers to make a brand pitch, realize that many of them simply don't care, are inexperienced, or don't know how to casually do this. One example here is Scott Disick. I don't know who he is, but he's associated with the Kardashians. And in one of his updates, he simply did a copy and paste. You can tell that because the update says, here you go at 4 p.m., write the below caption. And not only did he write the below caption, but he just simply copied and pasted the instructions with the caption. And so it was very obvious. And one of the top comments was that obviously you're being paid for this. Naomi Neo, who is another influencer, now she says the weather has been so hot that she always carries around a carton of her favorite Marigold Peel Fresh juice. And of course, neither of these are labeled as ads. There's not a hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored. So both of these are celebrity endorsers who are talking about a product without disclosing the relationship. And because of that, the comments, it doesn't take much for followers to figure out what's paid and what's not. And when it's not disclosed, they can be ruthless. As you can see, the top comment there was biggest sellout ever. They can see right through when they're being sold to. They can see when there's a relationship. So even though you may be disclosing, and disclosing an ad may cause lower engagement or not as much influence as you'd like as a brand, not disclosing it can cause serious trouble with the followers and a lack of credibility and an even further lack of influence. Now, finally, brand protection. This is what a lot of brands are concerned about when they start working with influencers, because what influencers will tell you is that in order to be authentic, you need to give over brand control. You need to give them complete control over the message, the style, and what they're going to do and their vision for how to communicate your brand to their audience. It's very interesting in this Forbes article. The headline of the article was Improve Influencer Marketing for Your Startup by Letting Go of Creative Control. That's the headline. And I don't like that, because that's what you're seeing all over the place. Influencers are telling you, hey, you need to let go of control. This article in Forbes is saying you need to let go. But when you read the article, look at this quote. What they are actually saying is releasing control, not completely, but just enough. Well, that's not what the headline said. The headline says let go of creative control. The article, what the writer says is release control, not completely, but just enough. That really is a contradiction. And so beware of headlines that are telling you what you need to do. Beware of headlines that are telling you to release total control, or read the actual article, because the article actually made more sense than the headline. So be aware as a brand how much control you're willing to give to an influencer. Have some level of approval of what the influencer is going to do and what actually gets published. This actually is what ends a lot of relationships, is this struggle over brand control and influencer control. Be aware when you go into an influencer relationship of that brand protection versus the influencer control. Who has ultimate creative control? And also beware also of what the influencer may say if you develop a long-term relationship with an influencer. An example of this was PewDiePie, who was an influencer and started doing a lot of work with Disney. And unfortunately, during that relationship, PewDiePie started making offensive statements about Jews. And of course, came under fire for that. And of course, Disney then had to end the relationship, but they were associated with PewDiePie because he was being paid to influence people for Disney. Also, look at the messaging. Who is going to be in control of the messaging? Who's going to give final approval about the messaging? And agreement on disclosure. These are things that need to be developed at the beginning of the relationship and not something that needs to be handled after the relationship or during the campaign is coming together. These need to be addressed ahead of time. Now, my biggest takeaway here, or my biggest piece of advice, insulate yourself from the hype. If you start Googling articles on influencer marketing, or you start looking at articles as far as how do I do it, or what should I look for, or 5 biggest things I need to know, like this webinar, be aware of who's publishing the article. I found something very interesting in the research here on influencer marketing, that the vast majority of articles that you'll find in search about influencer marketing, number 1, are written by influencers. You see, the influencers have a vested interest in people doing influencer marketing. It raises the tide, so to speak, that if more and more demand is there, more people will do it, and the influencers benefit. You'd be amazed how many articles are written about the power of influencer marketing that are written by influencers. Also, the media. The media themselves are going to write this because the media loves what's new. It's shiny. It's new. It gets headlines and it gets clicks. So the media is going to write about things that are getting clicks. But I was also amazed at how many consultants, providers are writing articles about the power of influencer marketing. I saw this at the end. It was a well-ranking article on influencer marketing, and at the end of the article, if you have any questions or doubts, let me know, and if you need professional guidance launching your very own influencer marketing campaign, you'll notice that's a link, and it's a link with keywords in it, so we've got the search engine optimization going at the same time. So this is a consultant and a provider writing an article about how powerful influencer marketing is, and then pitching their own services at the end of the article. Be aware that this industry of influencer marketing, there's not a lot of straightforward disclosure going on. And there's a lot of people invested into this industry and making money on this industry. So educate yourself. Insulate yourself from the hype. Be aware of the advice you're getting and who's giving you that advice. I'll end with this. In working with influencers, when I've talked to brands that have done campaigns with influencers, here's their 3 things that they found. Number 1, the right relationship. Brands that have had a very successful influencer relationship utilized an influencer that liked the brand already, or was already a fan of the brand, or used the product. There was already an existing relationship between the influencer and the product. And so the brand, in utilizing that, was able to then create something, and the message became much more authentic because the influencer was already a fan or a user of the product. Look for an influencer that's got the best audience or a perfect fit audience. Look for influencers that have an audience that has an affinity to your brand or your product already. You see, if you go macro influencer, there's no affinity group. If you start going micro influencers or something that makes sense for your brand, and because the audience has an affinity in a relatable, relevant group, it works. And then also the right mix of allowing creative voice to the influencer, but also an influencer who recognizes the need for brand control and brand messaging. Finding an influencer who will work with you, not against you, that wants to promote and see the best for your brand rather than just get a payday, and likes the brand and has an audience that has an affinity for your relatable, relevant product. That's the best mix. And that has been a consistent scenario for brands that have had successful forays into influencer marketing. Now, a quick resource that I would give you is the FTC guidelines on endorsements. Now, as you can see, the link here goes off the page. I shortened it. It's a bit.ly link for FTC DISC for disclosure. And so if you want to write that down very quickly, it's bit.ly/FTC DISC. All right, that wraps it up for me. We'll take some questions. But if you'd like to find me online, I'm on LinkedIn, Matt Bailey SiteLogic, and Twitter @SiteLogic. And Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Matt. That was really informative, and we have a lot of great questions coming in particularly on our feed on YouTube. So you talked a bit about the tools that you have for actually finding influencers, and what is your favorite tool for finding influencers? I know that there's Follower Wonk and Sumo.
You know, I tend to do the organic thing.
Mm-hmm.
I search. I just search and see who has visibility. That tends to, for me, that means it's got a cross-channel appeal. It's something that will not only work in social, but it will also work in search, which increases appeal. It goes to multiple channels, which means it'll last longer. So, I use search more than I use tools, just because I think it gives me a better idea, but then also I just tend to click and follow networks of people. I look for more of an organic approach, I think, is what I do.
Yeah, and I guess if your influencer doesn't have good SEO, then that's how good an influencer are they? So yeah,
that's a great. I'm going to go off on the side on that. I have found. So, for example, I work with one blogger. She's been a blogger probably for about 8 to 10 years now. Her search is fantastic, but she has never taken one course or read one article on SEO. She's just a great writer.
Huh.
And
content is king.
It is. And so I love finding people like that.
That's great. Here's another question, and this has to do with right at the very beginning. You were talking about the celebrity effect on the brain, where people are really affected by how much affection they have for people when they're a celebrity. And this is, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but someone's asking, so in order for this celebrity effect to occur, does the influencer have to already be a celebrity known to the viewer, or can the viewer simply be just told that they're a celebrity in order for that effect to take place?
I believe it's a recognizable issue. It's one where I recognize them because part of how this affects our brain is we put the characteristics of the celebrity on the product. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so the personality, what we like about that celebrity, we assign that likability or those characteristics to the product that they are endorsing. And so we buy that product because ultimately it's kind of like we want to be like them. They have qualities we admire, and now those qualities, it's just interesting how subconsciously this happens in our brain. We just assign those same qualities to the products that they like. So it has to be a recognizable celebrity. Simply being told is not enough. It's more of, you watch that show, you like their acting, you like their singing, and so you follow them. That's more of what that appeal of celebrity is.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. But I imagine it also couldn't hurt to introduce them as just like we introduce you and introducing any speakers. I'm sure it ups the credibility as well when people go, oh, this actually is somebody that's just not just somebody that's talking. But couldn't hurt, I guess. But that makes a good point that they have to. That's a great observation that people ascribe the emotions they have for that celebrity onto the product. So it really
Absolutely.
does make sense.
Well, it's kind of like, a couple years ago, Rachel Ray came out with her own cookware. Who cared if it was good cookware or cookware? That it's Rachel Ray, so it must be good.
Right.
They ascribed her personality to a set of cookware. So it's just real interesting how our brain just wires that together.
Yeah, even if the celebrity has nothing to do with the product, just like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's another question, which is we were talking. You talked about the regulations regarding about disclosure and all that sort of thing. But and I know that you can't specifically tell the influencer what to say. But is it fair to ask your influencers for a draft of their content before they post it on the internet?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The one example I gave of someone copying and pasting the update. It's just funny because that update was probably two copywriters, an exec, an account rep, probably all sweating over what kind of update to make, and then they sent it and it was copy pasted. So some influencers are going to want you to do it. Others, yes, they'll come up with it, but I think it's very fair to ask for a draft or final approval.
Great. Well, thanks. I'm trying to figure out this. This question is similar to what we talked about before when we were talking about finding influencers and that. But someone is asking, so what is the best website specifically for authentically dealing with Instagram influencers? Do you have any suggestions there?
As far as finding Like
Yeah, who's
legitimate
who's the best? If you wanted to find someone that was specifically the top name on who the best person, I guess, on the channel for who the best influencer would be on the Instagram platform. What are some ideas there?
Yeah, you know what? I should have a list of. There are some programs out there that will give you lists of followers, and it's interesting because everyone's going to have a different list or a different algorithm to determine who's more influential. And so there's not a lot of consistency among different programs, and it's really finding the program that I guess you like for your purposes. In the different industries, I've seen different results, different types, and so part of this is I wouldn't rely on software, number one. I wouldn't rely on an agency. I would use an agency if you're doing this for guidance, but ultimately, I'm not just looking for the top Instagram influencer in terms of numbers, okay? There's a difference between, and this gets into what's called depth of influence. Just because they may have 2 million followers does not mean they have a depth of influence of 2 million people. I may find that an Instagram personality with less than 1 million, but yet when you look at their engagement statistics, they're averaging maybe 18% engagement of those 1 million followers. Whereas another influencer may have 2 million followers, but they have maybe 1% or 2% engagement. So that's what's called depth of influence. And software won't always give you that. I mean, they're working on it, but they're really running on algorithmic calculations. I'm also looking at the personality. The personality, is it warm? Is it cold? Is it, what's the personality like? And how do they talk about other brands? And how do they engage with their followers? There's much more, I think, intangible that I look for rather than just sheer numbers of how many followers, how many likes, that type of thing. I'm looking more at the person.
Yeah, that's particularly helpful. Yeah, especially because if branding is important to you, you definitely want to have an influencer who is on brand. So here's an easy question. I don't know if it's easy, but it's very basic. And someone is outright asking, what is, Facebook or influencer marketing? And this is for the e-commerce domain. Where would you put your money?
Oh, Facebook or influencer? I would be...
like Facebook ad.
Yeah.
Meeting.
Oh, absolutely. That's the only way to do Facebook now. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I would, honestly, go more targeted, programmatic buying on Facebook than I would do influencer.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's see. We have another question here. Is how does influencer marketing affect your own SEO?
Again, it comes down to what they're doing. If they're a blogger, then that will directly affect your SEO because you're getting a link from a blog, and that's going to be there now forever. Same with Pinterest. Pinterest is very evergreen. Pinterest doesn't get old, and so that's always there. I'm amazed. The one mommy blogger I work with, don't take offense, it's just where she is. She's a mommy blogger. The vast majority of her traffic comes from Pinterest. That is like her primary channel. And so the SEO of Pinterest is very high. Now, if they're Instagram, it doesn't really seem to affect SEO much because it's in the moment and it goes away. YouTube tends to have some sticking power. So it depends on what their primary channel is, how well it will affect or improve your own SEO, and also how long it will last.
Great, that's certainly helpful. So we have a lot of good questions coming in. So we also have another question. This is first one, see if I can understand this, which is how do you find is there a way that you can, if you want to go on the offline side of influencers, for example, magazines like premium publications, like, or even publications that have websites like Slate, Huffington. Like, can you provide any customized? Mainly, I think the person is asking for specific outreach templates. Like, how do you approach people like this? I mean, are there a source for advice on how to like approach these people on these big publications?
But you know what? That could be its own webinar, is how to approach influencers, because honestly, most people do a terrible job of pitching influencers.
Yeah.
And there's a whole industry now of people who think they're influencers, and they're going after brands and telling brands to give them free stuff because they're such a good influencer, which is just ridiculous, because usually the brand or the company has more followers than they do. So there is a template. If you're going to contact an influencer, if you are a brand and you want to contact an influencer, the best advice I'd give you is consider the what's in it for me approach, and I don't mean from the brand perspective. If you're going to an influencer to work with you as a brand, you need to pitch it in terms of what's in it for them. What benefit do they get? What benefit do their subscribers get? How will it benefit them? The worst pitches I get are from people who tell me how great they are and what they'll bring to me. And that brands get, influencers, it's the same thing. 99% of the pitches you get are from brands that are telling the influencer how great they are and how awesome they are, but there's nothing as far as, well, what does the influencer get?
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is there is no standard method of influencing. Influencing, it can be everything from getting free product for reviews. So a brand, I give this influencer free product, and they use it and they give a review. It can be, simply paying to write a review, or developing a content series or a video series. It really is an amazing amount of ways that content can be produced through an influencer relationship. So it's not just simply I'm paying you to make a video or I'm paying you to say something. Look at creative ways to develop it.
Great. I think the last part of this question is are there ways to, if you don't have a lot of money, what do you suggest as means to compensate influencers? Is there anything other than cold hard cash?
Yeah, you know what? There's, for example, there is, I'm trying to think of one situation, how it worked out, but a brand, it was a software as a service, and they found that an influencer was using their service. And so they approached the influencer saying, hey, you love using our service. Can we develop a relationship? And ultimately what they did was they gave the influencer free access, and then they gave them a promotion code, and that influencer was then essentially now an affiliate. And so whenever someone asked the influencer, what are you using? And so he gave him a promotional code, or sometimes he would just announce the promotional code while he was on the circuit. And in that way, there was no out-of-pocket for the brand. All they did was create an affiliate relationship.
That's great. Great idea. So, well, that's actually all the questions that we have time for now. Now, if anyone that is on the webinar remaining that wants to ask a question via chat, you can go ahead and continue to do that for a moment here while we wrap up, and then we can always respond to you later on. We'll also be checking further questions on YouTube, and as those come in, we'll be able to answer those as well. I just want to take a moment now to say thanks again to Matt Daly for joining us today, and want to remind our audience that you can rewatch and share this webinar instantly on YouTube right now. And for all those of you who registered through WebEx, please keep an eye out for follow-up emails next week And we'll even have a written wrap-up of this webinar, including another copy of the video and more. So also, stay tuned. As soon as this session ends, we're going to have a little pop-up of a survey. It would be very helpful to us if you could answer a couple of those questions to let us know how we can serve you better. And of course, remember to follow Matt on LinkedIn. And for more information, give us an email here as well. So if you have any further questions, like I say, feel free to send us a message and we will get back to you. For a full schedule of upcoming webinars and events, please head over to our Facebook page on searching on Simplilearn. So Matt, thank you very much again for this very influential webinar. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you for joining us all. Bye-bye.
Bye.